Most retirement advice you see online these days, they seem to have this obsession with the math. And I can't really fault them entirely, but they say hit the numbers, beat the inflation, optimize the dividends, protect the portfolio, avoid tax bombs, get that Roth conversion in. But here's something that most advisors are never going to say out loud. And that's even for the guys that have $5 million dollars in the bank. You're going to wake up that first Monday after you retire feeling like your whole world is crashed down upon your feet. As a retired captain, where I spent 35 years in the cockpit of American Airlines, even to this day, I still talk to anywhere between 30 and 50 pilots per month. I help them do their plans, their schedules, and many of them are approaching their mandatory retirement age of 65. These were all lifelong pilots. They wore that uniform with pride for decades. They carried authority. They flew their airplanes safely. They've had purpose every time they walked into the cockpit. But when I asked them a very simple question, what do you plan on doing the day after you retire? Sometimes the silence is deafening because retirement is not just a financial transition. Nope. It's an identity transition. And if you don't have what I call a social floor, a plan for your identity, a plan for your marriage and your sanity, retirement can feel less like a landing and more like a carrier landing if you've ever done one of those, which you probably haven't, but they're violent. And look, for the high performers, the real shock isn't the loss of income. It's the loss of command, the loss of status. For 40 years, your identity has been tied directly to that responsibility. People needed you, people relied on you. In the cockpit, sometimes you had 200 lives in your hands. A surgeon only has one person in their hands at a time. We could have over 200. You had a mission. Then suddenly that mission disappeared. There was no crew, no checklist, no flight plan, no 0 Dark 30 check ins. And that's when your retirement regret starts to creep in. The truth is, most high performers are not actually afraid of boredom, they're afraid of becoming irrelevant. They worry that once that title disappears, you're going to be just another anonymous face in the crowd. If you haven't built what I call a social capital portfolio, that would be a network of relationships, interest, and purpose outside your past career, well, your brain will start to spiral down. In the airplane, we call this a death spiral. And when that happens, the consequences usually show up first where? At home, of course. Let's talk about something that's a little bit uncomfortable here, and that's called a gray divorce, GRAY. Divorce rates among people in their 50s have doubled since the 90s. And for those in their 60s, their mid 60s, they've tripled. Why could that possibly be? Well, because for decades, your job acted as this invisible buffer, this invisible barrier. You and your spouse lived in separate orbits. You had work, your spouse had the rhythm of the household, the family. The system functioned. Then suddenly, yeah, you're home. And you're home all the time. And you're restless. And you're used to being large and in charge. But before you know it, before you even realize it, you start trying to be captain of the house. And in aviation, we'd call that major airspace violation. At least in the airplane, we got a warning. Too low, terrain, pull up. But at home, yep, there is no warning at all. You're flying into territory your spouse has controlled and been in charge of and been solo in for years. And without a social floor, without hobbies, friends, purpose outside the house, you become a micromanager of your own marriage. And here's the financial reality: a divorce at age 66 is basically a 50% haircut of your net worth. Let that sink in. That's not a financial adjustment. That's a catastrophic engine failure in my world. And no spreadsheet in the world can compensate for that engine failure. Now, let's address the real elephant in the room. The fear most retirees won't admit to. What is it? Running out of money. Even people with strong portfolios will feel this. Sometimes they'll wake up early in the morning wondering, what do I do if the stock market crashes? What do I do if inflation explodes? What do I do if healthcare costs skyrocket. That one I can assure you will happen. And what happens if I live longer than everybody expected? And after 40 years of saving, spending that principal now somehow or another feels wrong. It also feels like you're breaking some invisible rule that you've lived by for decades. But here's the connection most people miss altogether. A collapsing social floor is one of the fastest ways to destroy a retirement portfolio. Isolation is not just emotional, it's also biological. Studies show social isolation increases the risk of heart disease by nearly 30%. It increases dementia by roughly 50%. I'd call that a loneliness tax. When you lose your mission and your crew, your health begins to deteriorate. You stop being a captain and you slowly start becoming a patient. Suddenly, you're paying for Medicare cost, you're paying for health care cost increases connected directly to this new lifestyle, and it could have been prevented. If you want to protect your financial capital, you have to protect your social capital as well. Now, when the mission disappears, the brain starts looking for shortcuts, shortcuts to stimulation, shortcuts to that little shot of dopamine. For many people, that shortcut becomes alcohol. And I see it with pilots all the time. That afternoon drink, that single drink, then the second drink, then the third drink, and the next thing you know, you have a habit. And slowly you find yourself in quicksand. But it fills that void when purpose disappears. It numbs the boredom, but it also accelerates the isolation. Arguments increase, health declines, and the downward spiral begins. The days start blending together. You sleep later, you drift during the day. That's not retirement, that's disengagement. So here's what I recommend before you retire: run your own simulation. Perform what I call an identity audit. Start with what I call the introduction test. The next time you meet a stranger, somebody new, try to go 10 minutes without mentioning the fact that you're a retired captain for American Airlines. And if you can't do that, your identity may be over leveraged in your previous career. Then try the Tuesday test. Take a random Tuesday. Do no errands, do no chores, just do free time. And if by 11 o'clock in the morning you feel extremely restless or anxious or tempted, or tempted to fill that silence with alcohol, that's a signal your social floor isn't strong enough yet. So, how do you rebuild purpose? Great question. One of my favorite strategies is something that I call reverse mentorship. You may be retired, but you're experienced. And it's not obsolete experience. You spent 30, 40 years learning how to make decisions under pressure, how to stay calm when alarms are going off, how to lead people when things get complicated. Those skills are desperately needed by younger professionals, and they cannot learn these skills merely from textbooks. Mentor someone younger. Try consulting, try teaching, try coaching, try volunteering. Not because you need the income, but because you need the mission. And I'll give you a quick example from my own playbook. I started a not for profit, a 501c3, at my old high school in Southlake, Texas. And the name of the not for profit was called Carroll Business Academy. Please look it up, it's all over the internet. We went from 0 students in the first year, going into year 2 now, we have approaching 250 students. So it's been an extreme success. And what did it do for me? It gave me something very powerful. It gave me purpose. It gave me meaning. It gave me a new crew, a new circle of friends. Some of the retired pilots that I've worked with, they even take this a step further. They create what they call a PMF, or Play Money Fund. If you've been following this channel, you know I talk about bucket 1 through bucket 5 money all the time. And what does this do? It keeps you from dipping into bucket 4, which is certainly a path to financial perdition. This Side income pays for travel, it pays for grandkids, it pays for fun things to do in life, and allows the retirement portfolio to stay intact. But more importantly, it keeps the brain engaged. You stay sharp, you stay useful. And yes, you stay out of your wife's hair or your spouse, depending. And you're not quitting, you're just simply redeploying. And that's why I do this YouTube channel, because of the challenge. Just a quick example from my own life. I've got a side project now running 5 days per month. I've been doing this for about 2 years. And what it's done for me is given me meaning, but it allows me to not have to touch my own retirement portfolio. And it's allowed it to grow for 2 more years. And I've seen the spreadsheet. Most of you watching this are going to be financially fine. But fine is a very long way to spend the next 30 plus years. So don't just retire from something, retire to something. Your value didn't end the day that you retire, when you turn your badge, your wing, your hat in. Loneliness leads to declining health. These are symptoms of the same problem, a missing social floor. So this week, I want you to audit something different, not your bank account, but your calendar. If your calendar is empty, start filling it up with purpose driven items such as meeting new friends, putting people in there. Build your crew before you need them. Before retirement isn't just about protecting your money, it's about protecting your life. And the strongest retirement plan in the world still needs something underneath it. It needs a foundation, and that foundation looks like a social floor. I'd like to hear from you. What has worked for you in retirement and what hasn't? Share it in the comments below. I read them every Sunday and reply to them at that time. And remember, health is wealth, wealth is freedom. Now, let's get busy living.